därför jag säger att I've never seen such hideousness in all my life. That's a lot of this, yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
You gotta be kidding me. This is not my fault. I did not do it. Seriously, what the... That was there! It was there! Okay, guys. I am not happy.
This video is unavailable.
This video is fucking unavailable. I didn't do nothing.
Okay,
so I'm just gonna...
Did the Russians steal it?
The Russians stole my fucking video.
Oh god.
It's always the fucking Russians, isn't it?
Yes, it's always the
Russian hackers.
You know what? Why don't you just read the intro?
Yeah,
there we go.
I'm gonna open it. I'm just like, what the hell?
Sorry, everybody. Are we actually live or?
Yeah, we're live. We're live.
We're live.
And
in a matter of speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, this video is on like YouTube, right?
It's
like, did
our
YouTube
video.
take it down? Did they take it down? Did somebody sneak in there and freaking said it's a private? What?
No.
Well, actually, I think this might be my fault. I uploaded the latest version and then I removed the other version.
And who will fight tooth and nail?
So it's a communications issue.
Yeah.
I
Well,
apologize.
let's see. Hang on. Let me see if I might actually be able to fix this because I think I actually have what is needed. Let's just delete that and add this. Yeah, shut up, start video.
You never know what you're going to start with.
Well, not...
Here comes the Honey Badger
video
Radio.
does not... Oh, somebody set it to private.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's weird.
it says it either... Well, it's playing in another window, so... Hold on a second. If it'll play the other window... Oh, you guys can't see it if I play it in the other window.
You'll have just play it. Set it to unlisted or something.
Oh yeah, okay, I gotcha. No, it's right here. I'll give you the link. Just give me a second.
Oh my god,
this should be all sorted.
Like there is like never a night where we don't have a problem.
Well, this, like I said, I had this all set up. This was the proper video and everything. You know, this was like
I just sent you the video.
Yeah.
Go for it. It's in the live show Discord channel.
Opening. Hang on.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like progress.
Yeah. This is just
This is gonna make me feel a lot better about doing one in the future.
Didn't do nothing.
Oh my god.
Just
this is why I don't host shows. This is why I don't host these shows, because like if I did, I would be like smashing things right now.
Oh no, I'm not smashing things, but I will say this. This is why I don't like last minute changes to things. And for me, the last hour, maybe two, is all last minute. So just saying.
This is actually
I'm neurotic, but at least I admit it. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna play the video here and what do you get when you cross the keen eye of an eagle, the grim determination of a bulldog, a healthy dose of logic and reason, and a hide thicker than the skull of any feminist? Last week on HBR Talk, Alison, Karen, and I described and discussed what got us involved with the men's rights movement, how we met on Reddit, and what characteristics contributed to our choice to team up. We got you as far as the first of two incidents that helped us identify a need in the community, women who could approach men's issues discussion without occupying a standpoint that begins with blaming and shaming men, without occupying a gynocentric standpoint to make ourselves heard. This isn't needed due to any importance of women's opinions on men's issues. On the contrary, The rightful authority on the needs of men and boys, their human rights considerations, and the legal and social issues surrounding those considerations is men. Last week I pointed out that there will always be women sticking their noses into this movement. As I said before, that's partly because women are busybodies by nature. It's also partly because within their own families and among their friends and colleagues, women are going to see examples of men's issues, and there will be some, at least, who recognize the need for reform and are inspired to speak out and engage in further activism. I also pointed out that there are two camps of women who will involve themselves in the men's rights movement. Those who will do the normal female thing of entering a male-dominated area and deciding it has to be changed to suit their attitudes and sensibilities, and those who will deal with the environment as it is, the issues as they stand, and the unadulterated nature of what activism is needed. The latter camp is needed in order to prevent the former from turning the men's rights movement into he for she. There really is a third camp. Those who openly like the status quo, who see the men's rights movement as a threat to it, and who will fight tooth and nail to shame us into silence. That is an area of female power that is entrenched in our society's perspective on and response to gender issues. Women who eschew gynocentrism can cut through that shaming. We are the antidote to dismissal of men's complaints as whining, to accusations that said complaints are misogynistic, and to derailing by other women who want to redirect the conversation back to women's issues, back to that gynocentric outlook. We didn't grow up being told, like boys, to defer to girls, respect women, and cater to female sensibilities, and that makes it easier to both see through and overcome pressure to follow those rules. Because of this, non-gynocentric women have the power to break down the barrier that gynocentric women's sensibilities represent to the legal and social reforms sought by the men's rights movement. This difference also provides us with a perspective from which to add to the information and language used by the men's rights movement to understand and articulate the issues faced by men and boys. In terms of how female power and female attitudes impact these issues, there are times when it is easier for women to identify the mechanisms behind the issues. I've heard that described by friends in the movement in a lot of ways, but I think the person who really hit the nail on the head is Alison. To paraphrase her, sometimes it takes a woman to see through other women's shit. To build on that, what the movement very often needs from women is that we get that shit out of the way so that it does not hinder the human rights work that needs to be done. And that, in a nutshell, is where and how we started to work together. Hello and welcome to Error Messages 101. I mean, Honey Badger Radio. HBR Talk 31, Once Upon a Badger. Where, now that one was my screw up. I forgot to click out of that. But, yeah, we just have a lot of fun here with errors. And if we don't make our own mistakes, we make mistakes for each other. And meanwhile, I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with our fearless leader, Alison Tiemann, Woozle Slayer, Karen Strawn, and that adorable specter of death, Prim Reaper, to take a little trip down memory lane. We're taking a break from the Accountability Gap series to go over a little history because even in the few years we've been doing what we do, our group and our audience has grown and changed. We wanted to talk a bit about where we came from, where we're coming from, and how this whole thing got started. But before we get into today's topic, a couple of brief reminders. If you're on YouTube and it starts experiencing platform malfunction syndrome and it won't let you listen, we're also on Twitch and on Facebook because you can't keep a good badger down, even if you try. If you want to be sure you'll always be able to catch our live streams, even if YouTube decides to throw us in the gulag for wrongthink, and one of our channels is in there right now, or if you want to catch our audio show, or rather our show in its audio format, remember to go to badgerfeed.com and register to receive notifications. And with that, on to the brief introduction. When we ended the show last week, we were just getting into the first of two incidents comprising of exactly what I was basically talking about in the opening video, seeing through other women's shit. That led to the group identifying and coming together over the needs I described in that opening. And tonight we're going to continue on with that discussion. So I'm going to open up, let's see, it's not showing very well here. I have made the page too wide, oh my gosh. And of course, Reddit has to show things in the most bizarre way possible here. No, I might have to reshape this just so you guys can see it. Give me just a second here, because it looks awful. And
it can be stretched past the screen, whatever.
I know, but I want people to be able to actually see what we're talking about here. I just gotta find the video window.
Do you want me to
put
just
it behind...
give a bit of a brief background while you're doing that?
It is behind the all chat window. Yeah, no, I'm just looking at... I mean, you can give a brief rundown. That'd be fine.
Okay, so a while ago, a couple years ago, I had... there was a MGTOW poster named Factory, I think 006. And he had asked by a forum, members of a forum called men's rights activist, to explain why men were going MGTOW. So that was men going their own way.
Well, they didn't.
This was actually in 2012, Alison.
Yeah, I'm going to correct a couple of things. I'm going to correct a couple. First of all, it's in 2012. It's Factory 2. And they said afterwards that they didn't ask him. But what they had done was they brought it up, and he went on and elaborated. So. And he explained, and we talked about this a little bit last time. He gave a really good rundown, and I've got a link to that post as well that I'll be showing a little bit of what he described. He wasn't insulting at all. At least I don't think so. But Alison, go on and describe some more.
So essentially, just the players in all of this are Factory, who is a man going his own way, and a forum called Lady Men's Rights Activist, devoted to men's rights activists. So we have the moderators of that forum, and we have Factory. And Factory is explaining, apparently not in response to them asking him to, but just in response to them bringing up the topic, explaining why men are going their own way. And like Hannah said, his explanation was extremely polite. It was pointed, but it wasn't, I don't think, personally insulting to anyone. And as a result of his honesty and his forthrightness, a lot of the people at Lady MRA, would you refer to what they did as melting down?
Oh, they ganged up on him, and God, it was like when a chick asks you, do these pants make my ass look fat?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just gets absolutely livid at whatever your answer is. You know,
yeah,
if you say, yes, those pants make your ass look fat, wear different pants, all of a sudden you have said she has bad taste in clothes. But if you say, no, those pants don't make your ass look fat, since she thinks it looks fat at that moment, you have just said she has a fat ass. That is the way. It was awful. It was just absolutely awful.
Yeah, and then, you know, he got more and more like annoyed,
which was
sure.
Understandable.
Completely understandable. And then they banned him.
Yeah, and then talked about him, and then posted this. This is the thing. I read this at the end, I believe, of the last show. So you have noticed that things got a little ugly around here lately. It's unfortunate, but sadly not unexpected. In fact, I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen sooner. I know that there are women at our men's rights, but for now I'm going to speak to the men. So already she knew she was trying to avoid the bullshit detectors. I know that a lot of you have been fucked by the system, have had your kids, your livelihood, and your rights taken away. I understand that you're pissed. We've started this subreddit, quite honestly, because we felt like there needed to be a place for women to learn about and discuss men's issues. A lot of women in our group have never heard anything about it, and have been indoctrinated to believe that men have no issues. The place for them to start isn't our men's rights, which has been made abundantly clear in the last 24 hours. There's too much hostility for anyone to learn anything. I hear what you're saying about not wanting to be told how to express your anger. Our men's rights is the place to do it. If you want to express it here, feel welcome to do so, but here you're going to have to do it in a more constructive way. We're not going to allow anyone to be called whores or to be told to shut their fucking mouth. If you don't feel like you can do that, then don't come here. Everyone is welcome here, even feminists. If you can't deal with that, don't come here. Everyone is welcome here, but don't come here. If you got your mind made up that women are shitty people by nature, don't come here. We're not going to deny history because it doesn't support your opinions. If you don't understand that, don't come here. Men's rights isn't supposed to replace feminism. It's supposed to be better than feminism. It's supposed to be about the truth. If that bothers you, don't come here. Personally, I'd like to see as many people here as possible, except you. She didn't say except you. With as many opinions as possible. But even if it ends up with absolutely no one here, it's infinitely preferable to the backbiting shithole we saw yesterday. Edit, just going to wrap this one up. Long story short, if you think behavior that we saw yesterday and criticized is in any way normal, justified, or okay, then you don't belong here. We'll keep trying to bringing attention to MR, but we're not listening to that shit or leaving it here. Now, this is an archive. So it says who it posted it. This account doesn't exist anymore. This is Doc. Doc Rage quit. I think about a year later. Read it entirely.
Yeah. So, no, I really hated my interactions with her. I just felt that they were just like
unproductive.
Yeah, completely unproductive. And I mean, I'm stubborn too, right? So, I can, but this whole, as somebody whose first experience of the men's movement was the spearhead, which was, calling a voice for men a bunch of pussies who wouldn't actually tell it like it is.
Yeah.
Which is funny considering what ended up happening with the spearhead.
Oh,
That's another story.
Yeah. But so essentially, that's where I cut my teeth on all of this stuff. And yeah, there were very, very few women who could handle that place. And our men's rights is it's like a daycare center compared to that.
Oh yeah.
That's like a freaking, this is a maximum security prison filled with violent offenders kind of environment, right? And our men's rights is so tame in comparison, particularly for women. So
one of my first experiences actually getting involved and interested in the movement was, I think on Reddit, somebody was mentioning our men's rights and saying, oh, this is a terrible place and they're also misogynistic. And then out of curiosity, I went and checked it out. And, one of the fastest ways to challenge somebody's lies is to see how obviously they're lying. And everybody was so polite and willing to discuss everything and open to different ideas. And I really found myself interested more and more in posting in there and hearing the stories that people were posting. And that's kind of how I got started in all of this as well.
That's a lot of times that's what happens. That happened with a Voice for Men quite a bit too. Terrible things were said about a Voice for Men, and then people would go to see the train wreck and they would stay for the information. And, we get talked about in the same way, but to be honest, I think a lot of times we don't get talked about because they know they'll stay for the information. So, now, of course, now we're getting talked about, and that's sort of happening. People are showing up looking for the train wreck and looking for the sort of constant yammering that I guess we're being told we do now. And they're staying for the information. So this has been a pattern, I think, with the men's rights movement. As long as I've been sort of witness to it. And I was definitely a witness to it before I was involved with it to a degree, because I went looking for help in fathers' rights forums when my husband's custody situation took a nosedive. So I learned a lot. Even though there wasn't a lot of stuff that could be done at the time for us. I learned a lot in forums discussing fathers' rights specifically. And it was the same thing. People would show up at these forums looking for a bunch of angry, ex-wife hating, scheming, child support dodging, deadbeat dads. And they would find men with heartbreaking stories whose ex-wives wouldn't let them see their kids, who were trying to use "you're gay" in court, and your kids will catch gay, or you're going to molest the children because you're gay, and things like that. You know, all of the stereotypes, all of the myths, the ugly myths that people used in the past to keep gay men down, being exploited by the women who promised to love, honor, cherish, and obey till death do them part once the divorce happened. And they realized rather quickly that the fathers' rights movement was nothing like angry feminist groups described them to be. And I think that's basically one of the men's rights movement's strong points, is that we piss feminists off because we are using facts, logic, and reason, and we are advocating for reasonable, rational things. But the reasonable, rational things we are arguing for are a threat to the feminist financial machine. And I think one of our strong points is that we don't have the circus that feminists paint us as. That, you know, we get them all up in a tiz, and they imagine the horrors of reversing women's rights back to something that didn't actually ever exist. And then they start telling people that's what we're for. And, you know, the next thing you know, people come looking to see the crazy men arguing to put women back in the kitchen and take away their voting rights. And this is what they find instead. That we talk about our history, that we talk about the issues, we talk about the facts, we give logical arguments, and it's interesting, and they stick around.
Do you have the original post by Factory?
Right here.
I'd really
I'm gonna
like to hear
link
it again.
I'm gonna link it in our low bar, or not our low bar, our chat, which I have closed. Hang on, there we go. And
because I'm pretty sure that it was not like the way that Doc responded to it was so.
So here's the post.
Egregious.
The post was titled, Doc gave me an idea. And I'm going to read his note on it first because it's what's at the beginning now. Let's see, I gotta actually alter the box again, damn it. This is not gonna work. So I'm just gonna move our all chat window to the other side. Gonna move the TV. You guys get to see all the process because I'm sloppy. There we go. And we'll just do it that way. See if we can get this to actually give me a better window so I can read the blog and I can actually show the whole thing in the... Yeah, there we go. Okay. And he says, Doc gave me an idea. Then he says... If this is readable, I know it's kind of small in the window there. Note, the exchange resulting from this article on Lady MRAs has caused me to change my mind and withdraw my support for this Reddit, meaning the subreddit Lady MRAs. In the interest of transparency, I will leave all of the info pertaining to this exchange up here with the ban, or what the ban happy mods at Lady MRAs do, however, is anyone's guess. Needless to say, I was thoroughly disappointed to see, quote, MRAs, end quote, thinking and acting in a manner indistinguishable from the average feminist concern troll. For example, this was the very first question leveled at me. Do you feel like you lack respect for all women? And I can't read that in a serious voice. I'm sorry. That question, there are very, very few things that will set me off. That's one of them. Do you respect women? I'm like, fuck you. No. Not when they ask me stupid questions like that, you know. And I imagine it's 10 times worse or even 100 times worse when somebody says it to a man. Because men actually have to deal with earning respect, and then they get that thrown at them by people who don't. So
then there's the whole issue of like, what exactly are you talking about when you say respect?
Yeah.
Are you talking about worship, the ground they walk on? Because no, they shouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's exactly what they mean. I actually wrote an article about that too. I like that. This bugs me so much. I went off on it on Breaking the Glasses, and then it got published on A Voice for Men and everything.
Nice.
So, yeah, this is one of my hot buttons. Do you respect women? Nobody who actually respects women asks that question. So here's the rest of it. Recently, I offered Doc the opportunity to ask me any questions she would like regarding the men's movement, the basic understandings, the schisms and rifts, and the general purpose of the movement. I also offered to supply her with data or referrals to other MRAs who would best address that particular concern. For example, Pierce Harlan on FRAs, etc. So Pierce Harlan ran a blog called Community of the Wrongly Accused. Prior to that, it was the
False Rape Society.
False Rape Society, I believe, is still up. Katwa is down. The Community of the Wrongly Accused website. There's archives of it, but a lot of it's no longer being maintained. But False Rape Society, I think, is still up. I might have that backwards. It might be the other way around. But in any case, he tracked a lot of the phenomenon of false rape accusations, both in university and in the public sphere. Pretty much.
It was basically an aggregator site.
Yeah, but I mean,
news stories and court cases and things like that.
Yeah,
and there was some. So he'd post research and commentary occasionally and stuff like that. But there was very little opinion in there. It was mostly just
facts.
Collecting news stories from across all over the place about various false allegations.
And he tracked it pretty much to the degree where it demonstrated how widespread the problem was and how pervasive and consistent the problem is. And it was a very valuable site to show people this is not a rare occurrence. This happens all over.
Well, and not just that it's not a rare occurrence, or that it happens all over, but that it often happens for the most trivial of reasons,
or without a reason.
One of the cases was that he presented was that a guy threw a flower at a woman, and she accused him of sexual assault, right? Or she hooked up with him. She hooked up with him, and then consensually, and then a few days later, they met up at a bar, and he'd forgotten her name. Right?
Yeah, there were some horror stories on there. It was a really valuable resource, and so that was one. The first thing that he does is mention a really valuable resource, and he's talking about a veteran MRA. Somebody who's been involved in the movement for quite a long time, who has been in the trenches and who has been paying attention, and this completely went over their heads. So he goes on to say, considering my generally hostile reception of feminist curiosity, I did not react well, and to some degree I still don't. But the comment I responded to twigged something for me. So I humbly offer one MRA's opinion on the movement. Sorry about the movement here. I'm dealing with a touchpad and I'm not good at it. This wall of text will address my own actions and beliefs, both to show you my perspective if you're curious, as well as to explain some of the evolution of the movement. It's not really supposed to be self-aggrandizing, although I do admit to a certain amount of pride in the fruits of my labor. And that's his intro. And I've got to switch windows here. Back in the day, not way back in the day, but a while ago, the men's movement, this is really tiny on my screen, commentariat. Can somebody else read this? Because I'm not getting, well.
I could give it a try.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
I can't
see it. Not way back in the day. But a while ago, the men's movement commentariat was centered largely around a blog called His Side, run by a guy named Glenn Sachs. Glenn is a lawyer, middle class, so I believe, and had the good fortune to be able to stay at home with his small child. This perspective, I'm sure, is partly why he took up the father's rights banner in the first place. But Glenn was largely a feminist positive man, believing feminists were misguided or misinformed. He seemed to fully believe that once aware of the facts, feminists would move to rectify the imbalance with alacrity. On his blog, Glenn's optimism was not shared by many of his commentators, us commentators, and increasingly we expressed our impatience, our anger, our unwillingness to chalk it up to a main misunderstanding anymore. Incidentally, I'm interjecting my own thoughts in this. I remember Glenn's blog, and I remember the day that he actually closed down all the comments because he got tired of the peanut gallery, which I was a part of, and Factory was also a part of. So that was, I think that was possibly in like the 2008. That's when that happened. I'd have to double check, but long time ago. Many of us, myself being probably the prime example, unapologetically began comparing feminism to Nazism, which Glenn took as anti-Semitic, belittling the Holocaust. Jeez. I'm laughing because why would comparing something you consider to be horrible to something else that's horrible be belittling the horror, regardless?
Yeah.
Speaking for myself,
I think part of it is people put the Holocaust above all other atrocities that ever occurred in the world. And they don't even think about the fact that there have been genocides in multiple countries. There have been genocides that actually killed more people. There have been genocides that were more, in some ways, more brutal. It's just that I don't think there's been any genocides that have been more technologically organized.
That's really what it is the systematic, technological nature of it. Yeah.
The horror of it was the machine the Nazi created, the technological machinery the Nazis created in order to perpetrate the Holocaust.
It makes it a lot colder than a bunch of people being ululated to murderous frenzy and then hacking people with machetes, right?
Right. And I mean, they don't think about the Ukrainian genocide was done in a similarly organized fashion, but instead of technology, they starved them to death. It was just as cold and in a way more brutal because of the suffering involved in being starved to death, and it takes weeks, months, and can, you know, lead to things like cannibalism. And it's not to disparage the horrible experience of being gassed to death, but we place the Holocaust on a pedestal of this must never be forgotten, that other genocides and other atrocities don't share when they should. You know, and it's not to say that the Holocaust was not horrible. It's just simply that it is not the only horrible thing that we should remember, and there are lessons to learn from all of them, and this is one of them. You know, that the things that led to the Holocaust, the behaviors that led to the Holocaust, shouldn't be repeated. And so when you start seeing them repeated, when you start seeing them come up again, it is important to mention this is similar to what the Nazis did.
This group of people are scum. This group of people are pigs. This group of people are dangerous. This group of people are privileged.
They're gonna rape our women.
They're gonna rape our women. They're sexually predacious. They're, you know, like all of these narratives. You know, they have unearned privilege. They're essentially stealing from everybody else, and you know, and they control everything. You know, like, yeah, who do feminists say that about?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, it's laughable that they would get kind of their panties in a bunch over people making this comparison when they're the ones throwing out fascist and Nazi and all this other stuff all the darn time. So,
at the time, it wasn't quite as popular as all that. But let's get back to what's being. Let's get back to Factory's article. Many of us, myself being probably the prime example, unapologetically began comparing feminism to Nazism. which Glenn took as anti-Semitic, belittling the Holocaust. Speaking for myself, I'm simply outlining the identical dynamic employed by both groups, and the likely eventual outcome if someone doesn't scrutinize what they're doing soon. Glenn decided that he should ban certain topics and limit what words were acceptable at the behest of reasonable feminists in order to show willingness to negotiate. I assume Glenn is not in contract law. Anyway, this led to a schism and the formation of the spearhead by a certain segment of former his side commentators. The commentariat grew in such places as Stand Your Ground and others whose names I have forgotten, sharpening their rhetorical skills and honing their understanding of the issues, though through constant debate with feminists of one stripe or another, a practice which continues unabated. I didn't actually realize that Glenn's his side and him sort of shooing out the undesirables actually led to founding Stand Your Ground. I'd have to look into that a bit more. It's a bit of trivia about the men's rights movement online that I didn't actually know. At the time, the biggest men's issues site was actually a place called Men's News Daily, started by Mike LaSalle and edited by Bernard Chapin, and later still Paul Elam. The site itself was a response to the utter lack of male-positive anything in the media. It was a way of celebrating men and male achievement. Non-politically correct thought could, and did, lose a guy his job, and newspapers certainly didn't publish even letters speaking in support of men or critical of feminism. At the time, men's rights activists as a group were largely whiners, myself included. We were complaining to anyone who would listen, no one, and anyone who we could corner, feminists, about the issues facing men, to no avail. Most of our time was spent deprogramming each other, understanding the ways in which we had been gaslighted into submission, the way the state is used to enforce impossible standards on men, etc. Basically, the embryonic stage of the fairly well-developed ideas you see here today, only with a lot more, quote-unquote, victim. Victimhood is the basis of the MGTOW movement, by the way. There's no use denying it, and frankly, there's no shame in it either. How many women that were beaten on daily are shamed into getting into a relationship with yet another potential abuser? How many female abuse victims are punished by the law for being a victim? Because that's exactly what happened to a lot of MGTOWs. And the fear of that happening, or the unwillingness to set oneself up to be a victim of such obviously biased and dire outcomes, is perfectly rational. The real indictment is in understanding the sheer size of this segment of the men's movement, as well as their reasons for being a MGTOW. Many women believe MGTOWs can't get, that they are essentially romantic rejects, the omegas on the fringe of the herd. Nothing could be further from the truth. Apply some logic, if you will, and you will see where I'm going with this. MGTOWs have literally decided that women are too much trouble to be worth it. That's the...
Hold on, Alison, you've gone robo.
Omegas.
Hold on.
Oh.
Start with MGTOWs have literally decided.
MGTOWs have literally decided that women are too much trouble to be worth it. That's the succinct definition. The nuanced one is that some of them are omegas, glad to find a home. Some of them are provider betas that have been burnt too badly. Some of them, however, are the men who are smart and conscientious enough to know the risks they take in modern society merely by interacting with women. Some of them are also highly desirable men. The wealthy men afraid of losing it to a gold digger. The charismatic men afraid of a false rape charge. The helpful men used to one too many times. And what women now see is the stunted men, too immature, selfish, idealistic, narcissistic, or plain stupid to see the writing on the wall. Or either that, or the men cynically using them for sex. How many "Where Are All the Good Men" articles do you need to read, after all, before it becomes obvious? The good men are the ones disappearing. Only the low-value men are willing to stick it out. That should tell you something. Anyway, most of these guys looked at things like the laws surrounding sexual assault, in which having consensual sex with a woman who's had as little as one drink is on par with violent rape and prosecuted vigorously. The laws and policies surrounding sexual harassment, hit on the wrong girl, lose your job, and the wrong girl includes not hitting on the jealous woman who can also lodge a complaint. The default assumptions made about him in society, men are batterers, men are default rapists that must have it trained out of them, etc. And they rightfully reach a simple conclusion. If he so much as speaks to a woman, he is quite literally placing his entire future and freedom in the hands of someone taught to hate and fear him. Now, one might scoff at this idea, especially if one hasn't experienced any of these things. Such is a natural response. Do you really think all of these MGTOWs are overreacting, misunderstanding? Of course not. They have legitimate fears. But look at how adamant so many of them are, and ask yourself the question, how many of these men are like this because they actually have been falsely accused or fucked over royally in some way? The evolution of MGTOW is one of simple clumping. Men have already made the decision to swear off women, look for support and validation in the MGTOW community. Regular men are not convinced by MGTOW arguments, likely ever. As a movement, MGTOWs are about as cohesive as you can expect, given the name. Typically thought of as a subset of the men's rights movement, I disagree. The MGTOWs I have come into contact with, we come into contact with in the manosphere, are the crossover, not the entirety. Men following the path are far more numerous than just those adopting the label or blogging about men's rights. For instance, in Japan, a country of about 85 million, I think, over 65% of the young men, ages 18 to 35, consider themselves grass eaters, a term that loosely translates into MGTOW. Chances are the percentage is similar, if not higher, in North America. About the only thing that unites the MGTOW movement as far as an ideology is one simple statement: women aren't worth it.
Now here is where I wanna point out, this is, I think, part of what they were taking offense at. This is the you said my ass looks fat moment. They're not thinking about it from they're not thinking about it from the perspective of men ended up at this place because of all of the things that have been done to men. That men ended up at this place because of the risks that have been imposed on them, because of the abuse they have suffered, because they have been stepped on, because they have been smacked around, because they have been pushed to this place. They saw it as an attack on women. Women are bad. This is women's fault. It's your fault personally. You are the one we are talking about here. And that was what really probably triggered the attack. And I can't really call it anything but an attack. It was an all-out, from three fronts, attack. But go ahead, Alison, and read from Andy S.
About the only thing that unites the MGTOW movement as far as an ideology is one simple statement: women aren't worth it. And yes, that's both an indictment and a surrender, which has been happening in quite a few cultural institutions, largely unnoticed until now. Now we see a lack of males in education, both as teachers and students. Now we see male unemployment as a problem, even if we blame the men for failing to adapt instead of trying to fix it. Now we see economic clouds on the horizon, unsustainable budgets, failing economies, and the refusal of an alienated male populace to submit to ever more squeezing without reward. If you can't tell, I think MGTOW will be the undoing of the West. At this time, there is also the pickup artist movement to consider, a slightly radical stance taken by myself and a few others. I personally feel pickup artists, or more specifically the game theorists that have evolved from such, are of extreme importance to the progress, even the survival, of this movement. So a few years ago, when I got pissed off at the low production quality of men's rights activist sites and became suitably embarrassed at the whining nature and sophomoric style of much of the writing, I started a webzine called MRA! Hoping to elevate the dialogue and presentation and hoping for cross-pollination, which of course was hideously laid out and of even worse design. My only excuse was that I was learning how to use the software at the time. In that magazine, I made the conscious decision to include certain authors: Fetalbogan, Emphratas, Zed, Angry Harry, Tara Pommy, I can't pronounce her name.
Dr. Tara Pomatier.
Dr. Tara Pomatier, Paul Elam, Hawaiian Libertarian, Elusive Wapiti, Obsidian, Bernard Chapin, and John the Other were all represented in the pages of MRA! magazine, spanning the gamut from pickup artists to libertarians to intellectual debaters to Sufi-like acceptance of and survival in the status quo. The problem became obvious to me because of the magazine and the feedback that I got, and from where that the scope had to be widened. This wasn't just about men's rights, this was about redefining or keeping masculinity, which was going to happen with or without male participation. So I dropped MRM exclamation point, and started Men with a Z magazine instead. Notable authors: Mark Richardson, Oz Conservative, Rossi, Toy Soldier, The Damned Old Man, Archivist, Typhon Blue, that was me, Pierce Harlan, Robert O'Hara, B.R. Merrick, and more, as well as the authors from MRM exclamation point. The incorporation of game principles into the men's movement is controversial, and to whatever extent I am responsible, I am proud. I firmly believe that the understanding of female motivation, sexual dynamics, as well as male supplicating behavior is absolutely vital to a healthy society, let alone our success as a movement. And as you may have noticed, the inclusion of traditionalist authors has led to a cross-pollination of ideas, and the increasing criticisms of theological blind spots is leading to a sort of reformation of religious sects. The inclusion of all aspects of the manosphere was not unique in any way, but I do believe Men Z was unique in positioning each aspect of the manosphere as equally important. One thing is for certain, these days that looks like a who's who of the manosphere. I do not take credit. Excuse me. Since then, I have written for AVFM, been a relentless party whip on several forums, a role I tire of, created graphics and posters, done a bunch of little things hardly worth mentioning. In short, I have been active in this movement nearly every single day for 20 years. I write all of this tripe by the way of a curriculum vitae, a sort of who's this asshole to say he can speak. I'm not saying I speak for any other MRA. What I'm saying is that I have been a close observer of it for a while now, and might have an insight or two. So if you have any questions, Lady MRAs, let them fly. This was
that's the end, and that's what they were freaking out about. And the reason why they freaked out is because of that one statement that MGTOW conclude that women aren't worth it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, forgive this slightly silly example, but think of a mouse who is continually shocked for going after a piece of cheese. So eventually, the mouse just stops going after the cheese. Now imagine another piece of cheese coming along and be like, oh, what's the problem? Obviously, I'm not electrified. It's fine. Stop being a whiny baby. Instead of having a slight bit of empathy for what that mouse might have been going through this whole time, they decide, no, the mouse is just being an asshole. And obviously, it now is the one with the problem. That's the way.
What drives me crazy about it is he's not even describing himself here. Right, he's describing MGTOW and what he believes the MGTOW philosophy is saying, what he believes they feel, and he described himself as not a MGTOW. He's much closer to the pickup artist game theory end of things, or at least was at this point. So he's not even. He's just saying, here's what these guys over here are thinking. And they took that as a personal attack by him against them specifically and started to freak out. And the entire thing was just a fucking shit show.
Yeah, and we did show some of that last time. Now I see I got like a bunch of tabs open here, so I'm going to see if I can find the...
I don't even know. Do we
let me read
comments still?
Let me read a super chat here that the Prim Reaper posted from the autistic goldfish who gave us $5 US. Did you hear about the guy who became a transgender dragon?
He went on the brag.
Oh God!
Oh my God!
I'm so sorry.
That is hilarious.
And Cyberzerk, who gives us, I believe, 50 Swedish krona. I am trilingual, but women lose interest when they find out it's a language thing.
Well,
okay, yeah.
Sex.
Well, I think what he means is that they think he has 3 tongues to pleasure them with. And then he's like, no, I just speak 3 languages. And they're like, oh, never mind. I'm guessing that's what it is. I didn't see the waggling.
So he's not claiming.
Stuff, so.
He's not claiming to be a cunning linguist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Hannah. Yeah. Well,
can I just? I just want to interject.
Yes.
In a verbal fashion, not any other kind of fashion. Just a question: is the original thread where all of this went down? Is it gone from Lady?
Nope. I've got it right here. The
is
original
it an archive
thread,
or is it actually? I
can do the archive, or I can do.
I think it's actually there.
Yeah, I've got the archive here.
Let's go through memory lane. Let's go take a tickle down memory lane.
So now, let's start with. Here I am switching windows at everybody, and you guys can't see it. So let me put some links in our chat here. The first one, that's the link to the post, the Hunting for Archives post, where Doc starts in. No, it wasn't Doc. It was Veggie Bowl starts in with, "Do you respect women? Do you feel like you lack respect for all women?" Like, well, I didn't until I talked to you. You know, he was really nice and didn't actually say that. But let's see. About the MGTOW dust up, I think that's where our comments are, really. We got... what had happened was the thing that I read about, you know, the discussion, the lecture from Doc, that got linked. I believe Doc linked it to the men's rights subreddit. That thread, I think, is gone because I couldn't find it. I might have been not getting it not doing it right, basically. But I didn't find it, so I think it got deleted. But in any case, or else Reddit has hidden it, because that's happened to me before, and where I have the link bookmarked, I can find it, but if I search for it on Reddit, it doesn't come up.
Can I just want to read one of my responses to Veggie Bowl.
Okay.
I think I just want to, okay, so Veggie Bowl.
Can you, hold on, go to where it says permalink under the comment, right click on that, copy it, and put it, yeah, I think it's permanent, yeah, permalink, right click on it, and copy it and put it in the chat, and then I will put it on the screen so people can follow along.
Just give me a second. Sorry, guys. This is off the cuff.
Yeah, off the cuff, but it's off the cuff on the show, and that's just the way we're going to operate right now, because we are doing this memory lane thing.
Do you want me to start reading? Okay, I'll start with Veggie Bowl's the initial comment where she just basically reiterates what she's talking about, and then I respond to it. And in the beginning, she says basically, so do you feel like you lack respect for all women? What about your co-workers, family members? Do you see game or pickup artistry as the only reasonable way to approach reproduction? I can't condone any generalization which includes all men, all Mexicans, all gays, or all women. This is pretty foreign to me. I appreciate your input, and I guess I don't understand what it is you think women should do. By the way, Veggie Bowl doesn't appreciate people's input.
Well, and here's the thing. She inserted all where all didn't exist in his statement. That's that's a female behavior. That's a major female behavior that causes problems between women and men.
It's more important to force men to give this generic sense of respect to all women than it is to actually listen to men. Mm-hmm. And it's like, where does that come from? Like, if you're a woman who's listening to this now and your rage is simmering up as us harlots talk about the sinful stuff, like caring about how men think about things. You know, if you're that woman, what is it that's so important about having this vacuous, empty respect towards all women without any reference to any kind of moral schema that you have to actually live up to? Like, if you're respecting all women, what is it that they're respecting? Because as far as I know, and this is actually not even true anymore because trans women don't, the only thing that women share, in general, for the most part, are a vagina, ovaries, and tits. So which part of that is what you want respected? Is it your vagina? Is it your ovaries? Is it your tits? And if all you are is like, I mean, if you can replace every instance of respect women with respect tits, I don't think you actually know what the hell you're talking about.
I'd actually kind of prefer that. I'd kind of prefer that it'd be more honest. Respect tits.
Well, I think it would actually be more honest.
I think Karen's response to that was perfect too. But after Alison, you read your comment, I'm going to take us to the about the dust up post that Karen wrote. Because I think that's where most of the discussion took place, where the three of us kind of ended up. We didn't necessarily talk about anything there to each other so much as that sort of led to the formation of the Lady MR, or the Fee MRAs subreddit. But that's getting ahead of things. Go ahead and read. And I'm sorry this doesn't show the name of the person that posted like the other one did. The only place I found that actually will show removed accounts is archive.org, and it's because it's an archive of the page at the time. The sort of apps that were created to do that don't do it anymore. So I can't get the names back on the posts as they are now. I can only show archives of the post that show the names, and unfortunately this isn't an archive, this is Sedit. It will put back removed comments, it just won't put back removed account names.
Alright. Okay, so first I'm going to read Vegetable's statement prior to the one that my response. I'm Vegetable, and this is quoting another poster. Men are choosing to feel that pain rather than take the risks. And Vegetable, and that particular poster is saying that, yes, denying women or not wanting to be in relationships with women is actually painful for men, but men are at the point where they would rather take the pain than the risk, which will cause even increased pain if there's divorce, if she's abusive, etc. And to that, Vegetable says, "We're not Gorgons or sirens. I've had my share of horrible exes. One was a commercial fisherman. He spent the entire summer wooing me. I lived in an Alaskan port town. I brought him into my bed, cleared my schedule whenever he was in town, and found out at the end of summer he was actually married with children in Seattle. He left without saying goodbye. I once invited a coworker's cousin up to my studio to smoke pot and hang out. This was in Miami. He pressured me into sex and literally forced me into anal sex. I didn't try to accuse him of rape of anything, but he was a subpar human being. I could go on. I love sex. I've been through my share of relationships. Bad people are bad people, honey. It doesn't matter what's between their legs." And this is my response to Vegetable. Why are you prioritizing your feelings regarding misogynist generalizations about women over men's feelings regarding the situation they're in? Every woman in the West has the legal and socially acceptable power over men, and the only thing stopping them is their good natures. This isn't a misogynist generalization, it's the truth. And in that situation, any reasonable person realizes that a woman must earn the gift of being trusted by a man. This doesn't mean all women are like that. It means that all women should be like that until they prove through consistent effort that they are not all like that. It means women have to make the effort to prove themselves to men and shouldn't begrudge men requiring this effort until the situation is fair to both. Again, this is different from fearing men. Men are held to a standard of behavior in their relationships socially and legally. Women are not in a functional sense. Let's reverse the situation and current social and legal powers over men, men's powers over women. How would you feel to enter into a relationship you with basic impunity, rape you whenever he liked, and you would get laughed at and could put you in jail or get you socially ostracized with a false accusation, all while you're expected to keep him happy, or everything he does is justified in other people's eyes? No, scratch that. Everything he does is justified in people's eyes because you deserved it for making him mad. So I'm trying to sort of capture the situation. Like, raping men is effectively legal. Beating men is falsely is pretty
Alison,
much effectively legal.
You're going robo and going in and out. But
sorry about that.
Yeah, I think part of it is because of when you talk faster, it happens. But this is definitely one of the points that it was a very salient point in this situation. And I like Whisper complimented it. Whisper is somebody, if you ever get a chance to read, just go through and read a Redditor's comments. His are good to go through and just find everything he's commented on. You'll get some very very smart points made. And But in any case, we go back, and I believe this is Doc Doc. And yeah, this is Doc Doc. Doc Doc tried to respond and didn't get it. Sorry, nobody needs to tolerate being berated and verbally abused because someone has had some bad experiences with other people. So now she is escalating her allegation of against Factory from Veggie Bowl's question, do you feel like you respect all women, to the post being berating and verbally abusive. There was nothing in that post that was berating or verbally abusive. But yeah, and then we have I don't trust anyone for a long time, period. But I don't assume they're shitty from the get-go. Which is, once again, this is every woman that objects to men going their own way does this. Men going their own way. The woman has a bazooka. Woman hearing this. I am not a bazooka. He didn't say you were a bazooka. He said you have one. I'm not going to use a bazooka on you. I'm not a bazooka. And just that just continues over and over again. And they never quite get the fact that the problem isn't that men think they personally are the bazooka, or that they personally must be expected to use the bazooka. Men realize the bazooka is there, the woman has access to it, she can use it with impunity if she wants to, and he doesn't know her well enough yet to recognize and be sure whether she will or not. And that's a scary position to be in. But
well, one of the things that Whisper brought up, and in that one freaking comment that gets cited over and over and over again, right, about what a woman can do to a man perfectly legally without ever breaking the law, without ever violating, social norms, what's considered to be within her rights to do, in terms of social approval or disapproval, right? How she can ruin, absolutely, completely destroy a man's life. And he ends it, this big long comment, I'm sure that's the one you're looking for, right, with the comment that when a woman rapes a man, the system tries to do something about it. When a man rapes a woman, the system tries to do something about it. But when a woman rapes a man, the system is the tool she uses to do it.
Yeah. And that's his stuff is very brilliant in that way, where he can go through and explain something like that in a way that sort of, like, he's got that reversal there, but it's in a way. And he told a story.
He told a story. He said, okay, let's hypothetically you and I meet, and we hit it off, and we get into a relationship, and you start poking around marriage, and I'm not ready for that yet, particularly since you want kids and I don't, and I'm just not ready to make that kind of commitment yet. And then you quietly go off your birth control pills, and you have every right to do so, and you have every right to not tell me because that's your private personal information, and all of these things, and he just goes through the story of here if every single thing goes wrong, right, if the woman takes advantage of every single thing she can legally get away with the approval of society, right, here is how she can ruin my life.
And write a book about it.
And she hasn't even broken She hasn't even broken any laws. She hasn't even violated any, social mores, nothing.
No, in fact, there are people who will verbally attack other people for criticizing any of that behavior. There are people who really go off on. A woman has the right to trap a man into a pregnancy. It sometimes can be the best thing that happens to him. I've actually had people say that to me. The best thing that ever happened because he wasn't an adult until he became a father, and when he became a father, he had to grow up. You know
and
what?
if he
Fuck
didn't
you.
want to become a father, he should just have kept his legs closed.
Yeah, but it's even worse though. I think is that idea that the woman has this right or this responsibility to trap a man into parenthood because it makes him grow up and become a real man. You know.
Well, and what I want to add to what Prim said, you know, if he didn't want the responsibility, he should have kept his legs closed. Well, there are men who have. And kept their legs closed, and they're still held responsible.
They're still held responsible.
Yep,
yeah,
they were raped,
or they're named as fathers when they're not fathers, and then not given the information or the chance to contest it, and they owe 18 years of child support for a child that is not theirs by a woman they did not sleep with and who doesn't want a relationship with them. I mean, there's all kinds of situations like that. But I want to highlight something. This is another aspect of where there's a sort of schism between women who get it and women who don't. And what it being that feminism wasn't what people think it was, and that men's issues aren't what people think they are quite frequently. So Alison's comment said, how would you feel to enter into a relationship with someone who could beat you with basic impunity, rape you whenever he liked, and you would get laughed at if you complained, and who could put you in jail or get you socially ostracized with a false accusation? She says, Typhon, this is exactly where women were 100 years ago, even though that's not true.
God.
Which is how the feminist movement began. And we all know this is not true. Like, all of the men's rights movement, for the most part, knows that this is not true. She goes on, I know that some MRAs don't want to believe it, but marital rape wasn't illegal and domestic violence was accepted. Now,
never!
On the marital rape thing, there were laws that
both men and women
feminists
had an entitlement to sex within marriage.
Feminist
it was
gender,
part of the bargain.
Right. There were laws that feminist gender, that now feminists got women's end of that reformed. It is now illegal to rape your wife. It's not illegal to rape your husband. In 2018, the current year, feminists will complain that it used to be legal to rape your wife, and MRAs are just supposed to take that complaint to mean that feminism was and is necessary. But it is not illegal to rape your... It's still legal to rape your husband. And you can actually accuse him of abuse if he won't have sex with you. Marital rape isn't illegal now, but only if the man is the victim. Now, the domestic violence thing, all you got to do is look at... the misandry blog, the Unknown History of Misandry. You will find news article after news article about domestic violence being punished, right down to the time one judge, actually there's been a couple of judges, invited a perpetrator to fight him in the courtroom. Fight me, bro! Fight me! The 18th or 19th century version. Fight me, bro! And this is how that was handled. They wanted to bring back the whipping post. Bring back the whipping post, meaning that the whipping post was a punishment for that in the past. So the idea that it was accepted is bullshit.
There was the one judge. There was the one judge who actually used to give the wife the option of being the one to wield the flog at the whipping post, and he would say, surely the sheriff's arm will be more strong and deliver harsher lashes, right? But I can see how the satisfaction of delivering them yourself might be, cathartic or whatever, right? Might give you some pleasure. So I leave it up to you, ma'am, whether you want to do it, administer the punishment, or have the sheriff do it for you, or the bailiff.
Right. So we have this history that there's the history that feminists talk about, and then there's the history that really happened. This type of thing is exactly what comes out of there being that difference. People who approach the men's rights movement from a feminist perspective are never going to understand the difference between the two movements, because they really believe that where men are today, that women ever were where men are today. Women have never been where men are today. They just haven't, period. So here we have this comment, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because we aren't going to end up having time, but basically she's coming from this position where, you know, feminism was necessary, and I'm getting complaints that the stream is frozen. I'm going to take a look at it. I don't think it's frozen.
Let me just continue with, with what I wanted to point out.
And Alison,
it won't take long.
Yeah.
Okay, so she essentially said, this is exactly where women were 100 years ago, which is how the feminist movement began. And then she goes on to say, I know that some MRAs don't want to believe it, but marital rape wasn't legal, etc. I don't doubt for a second that there were many abused men at this time, maybe as many as men as women, but they could have stopped it, and the law wouldn't have gotten involved.
Are you
That's the way
me?
it was.
Are you?
I know it's incomprehensible, but I just want to get to what I actually said. Like, okay, I'm just going to say one thing, but don't interject because I got to finish this.
Okay.
What does an abuse victim stop the abuse? By definition, they can't stop it. Anyway, seriously, if the men's rights movement isn't careful with people like Factory 2, things are going to swing right over again. This is the movement about equality of opportunity and fairness, not about being as nasty as you can until someone proves themselves to you. You're making all the second waivers did. And then I said, is Factory verbally abusing you in this exchange? I didn't notice that. Please don't link to other exchanges with him. I haven't been following his activities. And then in response to her saying, this is exactly where women were 100 years ago, I said, I'll ignore this misrepresentation of history for the sake of argument, although I will suggest you read the Hidden History of Misandry site. If you reverse the genders in Factory's statement on this thread and put them in the mouth of a woman from 100 years ago, what would you say to her if you were a man? It's not all right to talk to someone like that, like they're a piece of shit because you don't know if they can trust them yet. No, it isn't. But all I see is Factory saying that women are untrustworthy as a group until they prove otherwise. Yes, by extension, he's saying you are untrustworthy until you prove otherwise. You're probably not going to prove it to his satisfaction. But that's not an attack because he doesn't owe you his trust.
That's the thing.
Actually,
they don't get that.
They don't get that. They don't get the idea that men have the right to judge them morally. I think this is the real schism. And it can be traditionalist women, it can be non-aligned women, it can be feminist women. But there's a real line between women who will accept that men get to judge them morally and absolutely refuse the idea, absolute, unequivocal right to not trust them until women have proven to be trustworthy. The absolute unequivocal right to judge whether or not they respect a woman morally. There's this line, and a very, very small number of women are on the side where they recognize that men have the right to say, I don't trust you as a woman because of these issues, because of the empowerment by the state and society. You say to all your friends that I engaged in some kind of sexual malfeasance, and I'm out on my ear in my social group. You say to the state, and I could be locked up. That's a lot of power. And I need to know that you are somebody I can trust in my life with that power. And some women can say, yep, that makes perfect sense to me. And more women than you can shake a stick at will say, why do you hate women? Why don't you respect tits? Why do you hate tits? Why don't you respect tits? Tits, 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 tits. I caught myself there because you realize that that's all you're saying when you say, why don't you respect women? You're essentially saying, why don't you respect tits? Why don't tits control all of your behaviors as a man? Why aren't tits your entire motivation? Like, what is it with you and tits? Why do you have a mentality beyond appealing to tits? Like, seriously, how could you possibly have a life outside of tits as a man? I mean, tits, tits, tits. Why isn't your brain just a gigantic tit? Like, this is what you're saying, women. Like, if you're a woman who says shit like, why don't you respect women? You might as well replace women with the word tits and just ask that of men. Why don't you respect tits? What is it about tits you don't like? Like, really? Doesn't everybody like tits? Doesn't everybody respect tits and consider tits to be, I don't know, we should all elect them as the president? Why didn't you elect tits the last presidential election? Why don't you
You're
pay
just
tits?
so full of tit.
I was
tits the same as men.
I was actually worried about her like leaning on the desk and her tit accidentally deploying the nukes. So that's
Karen,
really what I was worried about.
You just hate tits, and you do not respect tits.
I really hate tits.
Ultimately, what the fuck does that even? What you're saying is,
I know.
You aren't men aren't sufficiently cowed and submissive to memories, ladies. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's read some.
Well,
super chats.
I was gonna say, let me point out one more thing here. This reminds me of a line from that cheesy Showgirls movie, where the stripper tells the guy, "You can't touch me, but I can touch you," and you know she's being all sexy about it and everything. This is no, girls. You can't judge me, but I can judge you. And that was their whole thing. Women are supposed to be the gatekeepers, the key holders, whatever, of judgment, of social judgment, and how dare a man take a moment and have a little of his own.
And that's why I used the reversal. That's why I just said, you know what? I'll allow everything about women 100 years ago, just for the sake of argument. Would you say this to a woman 100 years ago? You can't judge all men based on the kind of powers your husband would have over you if you married. You can't judge them. You can't expect them to want you. You can't expect them to rise up to your standards. Like, how can you expect that if you don't respect all men and trust all men? Then you hate men. Well, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah,
well, of course. And I mean, it's just kind of a logical extension of the whole women is wonderful effect. These guys think, oh, you know, the sun shines out of my butt, right? So you have to respect.
Okay, Prim, after having met you a few times and gotten to know you, I can verify that the sun does shine out of your butt.
But in all seriousness, though. Well, you know, I mean, it is a very exclusive club. I'm sorry.
There we go.
You know,
the butt club.
But, yeah, exactly. But basically, these guys are saying, you know, if you don't inherently respect me, if you don't inherently trust me, like, I'm a wonderful person by virtue of having those.
And I should just be able to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you believe it. Yeah.
And that's all. And if you don't believe that, then that's clearly a problem with you, because I am a wonderful person. I am a woman. I'm wonderful. So therefore, you're just being the asshole. The problem is with you. You must be a misogynist.
Well, one of the problems too is that, you know, like, people do change, right? You know, like they actually do change, and so it's not even whether a guy gets with a woman and she's actually worthy of his trust for the first couple of years, and then, I don't know, she bonks her head or some shit, and then all of a sudden she's not like that anymore, right? But she still has that same bazooka that she promised him she wouldn't use. She still has that. So, you know, or maybe she goes, she develops a personality disorder or a mental illness like schizophrenia or whatever, right? And it's just mild enough that she can pass herself off as sane among people who don't know her as well as he does. So, I mean, like, you're looking at a situation, and I'm saying this from the perspective of, you know, like, my father-in-law, you know, gradually lost his marbles over probably about the course of 20 years. And, you know, he would have been much different when, you know, my mother-in-law met him than, you know, when she had him finally committed. So, you know, you're looking at a situation where if you were a woman and you lost your marbles like that, you might get away with a lot of things that, you know, sort of that would be considered legally and socially acceptable. without any kind of repercussions. So I want to read some super chats.
All right, you can read the super chats.
French Honey Badger, US $5. Men can close their legs and still be able to have sex. Checkmate. Yeah, women can actually do that too, but it's a little uncomfortable.
Well, it depends on which angle you're going from. And whether or not your legs are bent. But
yeah. Well, no, you can even be like straight, flattened out like a board. You know, as long as you don't have a big bum and big inner thighs, you're probably okay. But at Tyler Preston, $2.10 US. I'm not sure exactly why that precise amount. Can you provide a link to this Reddit post?
I've put that in the low bar. So
yeah.
And I did that while you guys were talking.
And Thorhelm's Hall, US $5. Thank you, Badgers, for all you do. You've brought me back from the brink of hopelessness countless times. Never quit.
Aww.
That's it. I quit.
No.
No. Is that like when you have the elves, the brownies that come into your house and do all the work, but then if you make them close, then they never come back?
Is what?
I
think so.
The old fairy legends. I'm the only one that knows that.
I never knew that.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for the brownies to arrive to start.
Oh, but you have to move to Ireland for that. But
this thread and this link is where I met Karen, I think.
Yeah.
Or one of the places.
I noticed both of you, not at this link, but both of you in this discussion, and it really hit me that the difference between the reactions, and I think this is when I found out. I might have found out prior to this that Alison was female, because the name Typhon Blue is like the difference in reactions. Like you guys the two of us, or the three of us versus the reactions that the Lady MRAs had to Factory's bullshit.
Stop doing extracurricular activities with your microphone.
Okay. Well,
okay, now that sounds good. We got one more super chat.
The sun shines out of her butt.
And the microphone won't detect that, you guys.
No.
Well, maybe it'll detect some radio frequencies.
Or like the angels singing.
A small sun up your
Do you have the frequency, Kenneth? Do you have that?
Okay, all right.
Anyhow,
but this is
no.
Okay, so I'm gonna read a couple more super chats really quick.
This is
it is almost 9:30, so we are probably gonna have to cut this short simply because I work tonight again, because we skipped the week that I don't work, so I can't go long.
I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. I mean so
Stop
in any case,
apologizing.
yeah. Well, she's from Canada. You guys do that all the time anyway. But so we have J.O. Balls gave us US $2 and said, best T% rant ever. Which I'm assuming means that best fucking rant ever.
No. I think it was the best
tit rant.
Tit rant ever. Yep, there we go. Tyler Preston gave us $5 and said, does this guy think domestic violence among lesbians is not an issue because the abuser is also a woman?
It's a woman. It's a woman. Doc is a woman.
Oh yeah, Doc is a woman. Doc thought I was a guy for a long time, and I got to see her true face because of that. That was fun. She said nasty things about my dick. Apparently, I have. I think
you might have as well.
Yeah,
me as well.
Anthony,
we are actually. I just want to say this: we're not actually women in the men's rights movement. We're just the small dick brigade of the men's rights movement. The extremely small dick brigade. So small, it's actually a negative dick. Okay, there you go.
There we go. Although I've been accused of having giant balls, which
my boss once said I had a bigger dick than he did. So,
that's the way it goes. Anthony Durrell gave us $5 and said the worst thing about Doc, she came recommended when I first heard about her. Talk about changing quickly. And then Emery Kalami, I hope I pronounced that right, gave us US $5 and said if men are where women were 100 years ago, then that needs rectifying. No, feminism is oppression. And that's true, too. If Doc was right, if she had been right, then it still would have been a situation where the issues needed talked about and remedied.
Well, was it Doc or Veggie Bowl who made this?
It was Doc because it's deleted, and Veggie Bowl is still on Reddit.
You'll get in from.
By the way, do not bob Veggie Bowl with comments, please.
Yeah, please.
We don't want to get accused of bullying.
The annoying thing is that she's saying, "Oh yeah, well, men were where men are where women were 100 years ago." And yet she still calls herself an MRA. She still thinks that she's one of the good guys and everybody else is just too strong in the other direction. You just know that that's the thought process.
Yeah, I know. And what's really frustrating, and I try to explain this to people, is that, when you look at John Stuart Mill, raising the issue of women's suffrage in Parliament from like 1865 onward, the fact that, as of 1910, the suffragettes, women's suffrage had a majority of support in Parliament. It's just that the suffragettes would not give the Labour Party and the Liberal Party a bill that they could support because it would mean political annihilation for them, because the bills all only gave suffrage to rich women. And the Labour Party and the Liberal parties at the time were very working class specific. And, so if you essentially double the number of rich people who tend to vote conservative, these two parties are going to be like obliterated. So, you're looking at a whole bunch of politics in behind all of this stuff that didn't have anything to do with the number of MPs who would have happily signed a piece of legislation that gave women the vote. The Labour and Liberal parties wanted to give all men and women the vote. So you're essentially looking at this whole fucking thing has just been translated into like men had the vote for like fucking the entire dawn, the entire human history, the entirety of human history, and they kept it away from women because penis and women suck. Right, and it's
they didn't respect titties enough. They didn't respect
titties. They didn't respect the titties. Okay, but what you're looking at is this sort of. But when you think about it, the fact that we've all, like, most of society has swallowed that myth that men always had the vote. They always kept it from women just because they hated women and wanted to oppress them and keep them down and exploit them and subjugate them for men's express privilege and benefit. Okay. That lie has been so believable, it's been swallowed by everybody. So when you're looking at, okay, so what were things really like back then, right? When men actually had certain authority over women, right? When patriarchy actually was a thing, when men, the default assumption was that the man would get custody of the children because he paid for them. Right, when the default assumption was that women would submit to the decisions, the important decisions of their husbands, regarding property, regarding things like that. Okay, when you had all of these things that were in place, what did you have? You had an entire complex of legal and social protections for those women, right? There was this thing where it was like, okay, men have authority, men have higher status, men have more legal freedoms and rights and things like that, at least in terms of marriage and in terms of parenthood. But women have these protections, right? They have these protections under the law to protect them against abuse of that authority. But what do you see now when you see politicians, women running for office? What are they running on? They're running on a platform of women's rights. They're running on a platform of feminism. They're running on a platform of serving women's interests. Do you think that any of them are going to be interested in developing a similar complex of legal and social protections for men, or are they just going to be like Hannah Rosen and just stand on a stage at a TED Talk and smugly talk about how women are overtaking men in education, women are overtaking men in the job market, men are becoming obsolete, it's the end of men and the rise of women, you know, blah, 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 right? No, what are they doing? What are these feminists doing? They're not putting in place protections similar to those for women under coverture, right, against men who would abuse their power. No, they're actually stripping due process protections from men.
Well, and there's some stuff that actually not necessarily explains that, but makes it more obvious or understandable. Not understandable in terms of, gee, I can understand why they would do that, but I can understand how this happened. One of the elements that a lot of people forget to mention when they talk about the history of coverture, and they talk about the history of men's rights versus women's not having certain rights and everything, is the fact that every right, every privilege that gets attributed to men back then, and every protection that women had back then, it's all related to men's responsibilities to women and for women. And what feminists did was they sought to free women from all of those restrictions that were basically in place in order for men to more easily be able to meet those responsibilities, to fulfill those responsibilities. They fought to remove all of those restrictions while maintaining those responsibilities, those obligations that men had to women. And so what you ended up with was a situation where the machinery that existed, the social machine, the societal machine, wherein men were the linchpin, that they took care of everything, they were the ones who protected, they were the ones who provided, and they were the ones who decided how the resources were going to be allotted in order to make that happen. And well, women were the ones that talked about the need for the resources. Women may be the ones that came along and said, yes, this is where the resources are needed. Men were the final say on whether or not they were spent that way. That disappeared, but they were still responsible for making sure the resources were there for everything that women wanted. And they're still today responsible for those, for making sure the resources are there. Still responsible today for women's safety. Still responsible today for women's happiness. Nobody is responsible for men's happiness. Men aren't even allowed to be responsible for men's happiness in a lot of ways. But men are responsible for women's happiness. And men are responsible for women's welfare in society, under the law, and by the social standards. That has never changed. And that's part of the problem. That imbalance has created a terrible situation for men. And it's not just, I mean, the laws are obvious incarnations or manifestations of that imbalance. But even if we get legal reform done, even if we reverse the gendering of domestic violence law, even if we equal out family court so that it is not gendered in either direction, if we do not get rid of that social and legal attitude wherein men are responsible for women's welfare and men are responsible for women's happiness, but it's not reciprocated in any way, we are going to still see discrimination in law and policy in one form or another. It'll just keep getting reenacted over and over again until those attitudes are addressed. And this is where a lot of women are going to clash in the men's rights movement, and where men need a shield, not a shield as in other people to shield them, but a shield as in the way a thick skin works, only in reference to men's sympathy for women. And you're going to have to a degree, you're going to have to let women hash it out. You know, that whole thing about not getting involved in a chick fight, it stands with this. But at the other end of it, men are going to have to be able to step back and say, you know, it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit that men have to be responsible for women's welfare and happiness without reciprocation. And the women that come into the movement with the idea of shaping it to that gynocentric nature, that belief that it has to accommodate men's accountability or responsibility for women's happiness and welfare without reciprocation, they have to either be put in their place or kept at arm's length. And that really has to be
the entire point.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
It's not just a matter of dismissing the entire point.
No.
They will turn the movement into he for she. This is how the men's rights movement will get turned into an arm of feminism. It will become a means by which women can manipulate large swaths of men to gear their masculinity, gear their self-perception, gear their identity, again, around serving women. So that's what we ended up bonding over.
Yeah, it really was.
That's what I saw. That's what I saw Karen way back when.
Yeah, I'm going to give everybody a last statement, and then I'm going to shut it down.
Okay, no. Wait,
Karen, go
one
first because she's been trying to get in.
Allison.
Oh, I muted her, by the way, so maybe she
Allison needs to.
Oh, are you frustrated, Karen? Is this frustrating you?
What?
I'm sorry.
Excuse me? Allison, before you take us out, I want Allison to read the last super chat just because the name is unpronounceable.
Oh, I was going to do that.
You just gotta pronounce it with like a heavy accent and try and make it sound awesome, like Tervald Vendrashane or something awesome like that.
You know what?
I like that.
Just say that Prim just said it. So the person that Prim just said gave us $10 US.
Oh, you're such a coward!
I'm a rules lawyer here. Rules lawyer. Got through that. All right. Work for an assisted living facility where I was happy to be placed in the Alzheimer's and dementia unit. Women could scratch me and the men would often be put in cold baths.
Oh man. I worked in a nursing home and I could tell you stories and you're right. There were behaviors that women would get away with that would be treated as deliberate or threatening when men did them. And that I noticed at both nursing homes I worked at, the good one and the bad one. So that's, yeah. And
it's just a harmless little old lady.
Well, the other end of it was ailments would get more sympathy from women than when a woman had the ailment than they did when a man was complaining about it, especially pain. And that bugged the shit out of me. Now, I could go on. There's a lot of stuff I could talk about with respect to nursing homes, and I might at some point in the future. I think I should do a show on differences in elder care between men and women because there's some significant differences sometimes, and that's. But I'm not going to get into that now because we'll be on too late. So I'm going to go on to
somebody just rock blocked us.
Yeah. Rock 1 gave us $10 US and said, today's Mustangs and women are the same. By the time the average can afford that beat up thing, the maintenance is too high. Metaphor for women bringing kids into the relationship. And honestly, and I'm not a massive car aficionado, so don't take this wrong, but I don't like the way today's Mustangs or women are because they've all been standardized and reshaped for purposes that take away from, I don't know,
you can't work on them yourself anymore.
The thing that gave them their charm. Well, there's that too, but I mean, when you look at today's sports cars, okay, you can't immediately see dramatic differences between a Mustang and most of the other cars. You might be able to see differences once you get up close, but they all have a very similar shape, and they all kind of look like the ordinary four-door family sedan now. They're horrible. Well, women have kind of done that to themselves too, especially the younger generation. They all look, and in terms of the way they talk and the way they act and the way they engage with people and the expectations they have, they all have this. It's not efficiency. It's they don't have the compassion for other people that women used to be known for. It was like part of the deal. You were a lady if you gave a shit about the condition the other people around you were in, and you offered care and comfort, and you were, you know, you were a comfort to the people around you, and a ray of sunshine to people. Not necessarily bubbly and cute, but at least kind and patient, and like all of those virtues that women exhibited in order to earn the title of lady and the respect that went with it. Those have all gone out the window, and it's a lot like a car losing its curves. I got one more super chat I'm gonna read, and then I'm gonna go ahead and take us on out. The Frenchinator 2 gave us US $5 and said, one of the projects at a women's health event presented was how do masculine norms hurt men's health. She had a gender studies degree as well.
That's infuriating.
Yes, and I'm gonna Prim's comment after this. Secret trick to getting extra super chats: tell everyone Hannah's in a hurry, and then they donate out of spite. And I don't know. Crap. I might just start telling everybody every show that I have to go to work just so we get more super chats. In the meantime, I'm going to thank everybody. I'm going to thank my very patient co-hosts. Thank you all for being patient with the technical difficulties at the beginning. Thanks for the questions that everybody asked. And to everyone who has made this show happen, both in the foreground and the background, thank you very much. And good night, everyone.